Today is the day that the Electoral College members in each different state cast their votes for the President of the United States. And while it is one of the most significant days in the electoral process, it is not the end. They keep saying it's over. December 8th, safe harbor deadline, it's over. It's not over. The lawsuits clearly continued. They say December 14th, it's over. They've counted their votes. And yes, as USA Today reports, 4 states contested by Trump cast their Electoral College votes for Biden. Boom, it's done. Newsmax, a newer channel heavily supported by Trump supporters, says the contested states have voted for Joe Biden, the future president-elect. They keep saying it's over, it's over, it's over, but it is not. On January 6th, as reported by the New York Times, Mike Pence will count the votes and determine who won the election. Now, there's one big problem for Democrats. As of right now, there's reporting coming out and official statements that the Republican electors have also cast their votes and will be sending them to Congress. It may be meaningless. The Trump campaign has said that there will be alternate electors sent to Congress. These are called dueling electors. It has happened before. Interestingly, as many of these news outlets, even Newsmax, focus on the official governor or secretary of state approval of these electoral votes, they ignore what happened in 1960 with Richard Nixon. Even though the governor approved Republican votes, they chose to count the Democrat votes instead. Now, listen, I've long maintained I don't see Trump pulling this one out. I just don't. But it is not over. I don't know what that means. There's always some slim possibility something happens, but you need to understand 2 things. We just got a major breaking story I covered over at 1 p.m. over at Timcast News. The forensic analysis from the Dominion voting machines in Antrim County, Michigan came out, and the assessment from a Harvard-educated MIT affiliated individual who worked with the CIA and NASA has said he believes that there is intentional fraud here. What you want to conclude from that, that's on you, but this is still going to change the game. The big reason these states the Republicans are casting electoral votes is not necessarily them saying, count us and ignore the will of the people. They're saying, so long as there are challenges, we must have our votes recorded. That means in the next couple of weeks, maybe something happens, and then it comes down to January 6th, and Mike Pence pulls up Pennsylvania, and he pulls up Pennsylvania, says, there's 2 Pennsylvanias. Which ones do I count? And maybe he'll choose the one with the governor's stamp and seal of approval on it doesn't count like Richard Nixon did. I don't like playing this game, and I've said it before about here's how Trump could still win. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Trump is going to win or is even likely to win. I think it's astronomically unlikely that Trump will win this, okay? There's potentially some martial law moves he can make, but I just don't think he has the confidence of people working in government. I just don't see it. Sorry, that's my opinion. You can disagree. But I absolutely must report on the fact that on today, when the Electoral College set to vote, there are 3 states so far that appear to have dueling electors. Now, the left can say, it doesn't matter if they appoint them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you think. We're talking about human beings who are fallible and make choices. And maybe you think it doesn't matter, has no legal standing, fine. Maybe Mike Pence doesn't care what you think, and it'll have to go to the Supreme Court. These things are happening. So let's break down what's going on, where we're at, and I want to show you what happened in 1960 when the official governor's seal was rejected for other votes. It's happened. Doesn't mean it'll happen now. Doesn't mean it's extremely likely to. This is just what's going on. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. Got a P.O. box. You want to send me some stuff. But the best thing you can do, share this video. A lot of people might not know what's going on. More importantly, YouTube probably won't show them what's going on because, well, they've been putting their thumb on the scale to make sure news and information like this doesn't get out. Or at least they're trying their hardest to curtail it. You can counter this suppression by sharing this video, and also helps my channel, helps me personally, so I greatly appreciate it. Don't forget, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Here's the first official news from USA Today, and then I'll show you what's going on with these contested states. They say, 4 states contested by Trump cast their electoral college votes for Biden. Nearly 6 weeks after Americans voted Joe Biden the next president, the Electoral College is meeting Monday and will make President Donald Trump's electoral loss official. No, it won't. The votes aren't going to be counted until January 6th. They just keep saying it's over when it's not. I understand. With the advent of television and radio and internet, we can see them cast their votes. But we're only seeing what the media is showing us. That means if you watch right-wing media, if you watch, say, Right Side Broadcasting Network on YouTube, you will see Nevada casting votes for Trump. It's just all about propaganda and perception. We got to talk about what the legal ramifications are, and that's what we'll do. They say, in state houses across the country, 530 electors will formally cast their votes for either Biden or Trump based on the popular votes in their states. Biden, they say the next president-elect, which is a fair bet in my opinion, but sure, it's not true now, and Kamala Harris are expected to receive 306 electoral votes. I love how they say expected to, but still call him president-elect, topping 232 for Trump. The electoral votes will be counted at a special joint session of Congress on January 6th, before Biden and Harris are inaugurated on January 20th. 4 states contested by Trump cast electoral votes for Biden. They say Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona each voted for Joe Biden, electors in 3 battleground states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, each voted for Joe Biden for president and Kamala Harris for vice president Monday, delivering a collective blow to President Donald Trump, who sought to overturn the election results in each state. The votes, which came before 1 p.m., gave Biden 20 electoral votes from Pennsylvania, 16 from Georgia, and 11 from Arizona. Nevada earlier cast its ballots for Biden, meaning 4 of 6 states contested by Trump have completed their votes. Quote, "The people have spoken, and we respect the majesty of the democratic system," said Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar, a Democrat, quoting President George H.W. Bush. As she kicked off, they said Georgia, as she kicked off her state's meeting. "Your participation today in this electoral college proves once again the durability of our Constitution and the majesty of our democracy. In this historic moment, our democracy rests here with you." Let's stop for a second. They're not telling you what Trump is thinking and what Trump is doing. They say it's a collective blow to the president. Why? Stephen Miller, alternate electors will keep Trump election challenge alive. They say this is from thehill.com. President Trump's allies are preparing to send an alternate slate of electors to Congress. Senior White House advisor Stephen Miller said Monday, signaling Trump will drag out his efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election, even after the Electoral College certifies Joe Biden as the winner. Okay, certification already happened in many of these states. They're not certifying the votes until January 6th. Sorry. Miller, appearing on Fox News as a senior advisor to the Trump campaign, brushed off the idea that the Electoral College vote marked any kind of end to the process. The only date in the Constitution is January 20th, so we have more than enough time to right the wrong of this fraudulent election result and certify Donald Trump as the winner of the election, Miller said on Fox and Friends. As we speak today, an alternate slate of electors in the contested states is going to vote, and we're going to send those results up to Congress, he continued. This will ensure that all of our legal remedies remain open. That means that if we win these cases in the courts, that we can direct that the alternate slate of electors be certified. Electors from every state will meet Monday, that's today. Miller indicated that Trump supporters will act as alternates in a handful of contested states, including Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, to submit their own unofficial results. Should the Trump campaign succeed in overturning the outcome in any of those states, Miller said, the alternate electors could then be recognized by Congress. Nothing in the Constitution or state electoral process allows for such an alternate slate of electors. But that is still irrelevant. What matters is if they say something today, something could still change. Look, I say this a lot, but you got to understand we're talking about human beings. OK, if the will of the people changes on some day and people just do it, then so be it. Look, I'll pull up the historical precedents. We can see 1960 United States presidential election in Hawaii. They say initially it appeared Republican candidate Richard Nixon had won in the state, as he was 141 votes ahead after the first count. A court-ordered recount was still underway when Hawaii's Republican governor signed the certificate from the GOP electors, giving the state's 3 electoral votes to Nixon. Let me stop right there. There are still election contests going on. Lawsuits are still happening, and data is still being released. And the governors certified the results. That's what we're seeing today. It does not mean it's set in stone. I'm going to pause again and say, I don't think Trump wins. But if we follow the precedent from 1960, it's possible that Mike Pence in several, couple weeks says, based on the new information in court orders, we're not counting the Democrat victors. That's why these days don't really matter. It's all about what people decide. If the Supreme Court makes a decision, it could change everything. But let's read on. They say this. A court order recount was still underway when they signed the certificate from the GOP electors giving the states 3 electoral votes to Nixon. Now, to be fair, that's a court-ordered action. Just because there's lawsuits doesn't mean it's the same thing. On the same day, the Democratic electors also issued a certificate awarding the votes to Kennedy, just like we're seeing now with the Republicans. The final recount showed Kennedy had actually prevailed, forcing the governor to sign the second certificate from the Democratic electors. Both certificates had arrived in Washington by the time Congress convened in January 1961, with then Vice President Nixon charged with presiding over a joint session to certify his own election loss. Hearing no objections, Nixon ordered the Democratic certificate counted and ignored the accompanying Republican certificate, even though it also bore the governor's signature as required by federal law. I do not think Trump is going to win this. I'll say it 50 million times. I know many Trump supporters might not like that opinion from me, but that's just my opinion. My predictions seem to be not worth all that much, so I'll just show you what's going on. From pagop.org, Republican electors cast procedural vote, seek to preserve Trump campaign legal challenge, saying, at the request of the Trump campaign, the Republican presidential electors met today in Harrisburg to cast a conditional vote for Donald Trump and Mike Pence for president and vice president, respectively. Quote, we took this procedural vote to preserve any legal claims that may be presented going forward, said Bernie Comfort, Pennsylvania chair of the Trump campaign. This was in no way an effort to usurp or contest the will of the Pennsylvania voters. Today's move by Republican Party electors is fashioned after the 1960 presidential election, in which President Nixon was declared the winner in Hawaii, while Democrat legal challenges were pending. Democratic presidential electors met to cast a conditional vote for John F. Kennedy to preserve their intent in the event of future favorable legal outcomes. The conditional resolution states that electors certify their vote for the president and vice president on the understanding that if, as a result of a final non-appealable court order or other proceeding prescribed by law, they are ultimately recognized as being the duly elected and qualified electors for president and vice president of the United States of America from the state of Pennsylvania. We also have this from Right Side Broadcasting Network breaking: Nevada GOP electors cast ballot for Donald J. Trump, declaring him winner of 6 electoral votes in Nevada. So we also then have Georgia. David Schaefer, who is with the GA Republicans, he is the chairman of the Georgia Republican Party. He said, because the president's lawsuit contesting the Georgia election is still pending, the Republican nominees for presidential elector met today at noon at the state capitol and cast their votes for president and vice president. It has happened. There are dueling electors. It doesn't mean Congress will recognize them. But I believe there are going to be Republicans who object to the Democratic votes. We saw 126 Republicans in the House support the Texas lawsuit. The likelihood that we see individuals sign on to object the electoral votes and bring up the alternate votes, I believe it's very, very likely. Let me tell you. When will these people on the left realize Trump is not playing around and will take this to the bitter end? He's willing to go this far. Don't you think January 6th will come around and we are going to see objections? My personal opinion, Mike Pence, honorably and respectably, will take a look at the votes. Trump having his court cases not pan out because many of these challenges, not just from Trump, but from others, haven't been panning out. He will likely just say, I see the objection. However, this one's got the stamp from the governor and this one doesn't. The Democrats get the votes. It is still possible Mike Pence, and this is what the New York Times said, could say, I'm not counting either, because the state is clearly in dispute. The state legislatures are the ones who have final say. If they say we direct these electors, possibly Mike Pence could be like, I'm not counting them. And if he doesn't, we've got, I believe, that brings us to, we got 20 in Pennsylvania. We have, what are the states? Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Nevada. So 26 and 16, we're looking at about, 42? That takes Joe Biden. That means Joe Biden is not going to be the winner. He will not break 270. And then we'll have a contingent election, as most of you are probably aware. And these are just 3 states that, it was 3 states Trump needed to dispute in order to make this happen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. And again, I've said a million times, I don't think so. But the precedent is still really, really interesting. Now I want to show you something. This is from the Baltimore Sun. I highlighted this from the New York Times, but many people have been talking about it. People need to recognize on the left, and this is why I say share this video, let them know. This is Trump's strategy. For now, it doesn't mean it's going to work, but it's important you know what's going on. You ignore it, that's when Trump wins. With the Electoral College had to cast votes for Biden on Monday, Trump allies eye long-shot election reversal in Congress, they say. As the president continues to refuse to concede, a small group of his most loyal backers in Congress is plotting a final stage challenge on the floor of the House of Representatives in early January to try to reverse Biden's victory. Constitutional scholars and even members of the president's own party say the effort is all but certain to fail. But the looming battle, January 6th, is likely to culminate in a messy and deeply divisive spectacle that could thrust President Pence into the excruciating position of having to declare once and for all that Trump has indeed lost the election. Now, I believe this is the same New York Times article just posted to the Baltimore Sun. But I want you to take that and recognize what that means. What are the 2 things we need for this challenge to happen? They can't just have people object. I object to that state. I mean, you could, considering there's arguments and, disputes and there's lawsuits. But now with a dueling slate of electors, we've seen it many times before. It could ultimately end with them saying, I object, and Mike Pence saying, I'm not dealing with this objection. We don't have time, and I'm not a judge. Take it to the Supreme Court. Maybe it goes to Supreme Court. Maybe it's January 15th, and we still have no idea what's going to happen. I'll tell you what I think. January 15th is going to come around, and Trump's still going to be fighting, but it's going to be certified for Joe Biden. That's my opinion. Look, I'll tell you, my gut says Donald Trump somehow finds a way to do this. But my head clearly says it's effectively done. OK, the Texas lawsuit was the best chance. Even Alex Jones, I had him on the IRL podcast, was saying that's basically, I mean, we're talking super Hail Mary at this point for Trump to try and pull anything off. It's just not at all likely. But it's been in the plan. It's been in the works for a long time. Let me show you this from Reuters. Explainer: dueling electors pose risk of U.S. vote deadlock. From October 16th. We have known this could happen. It's not being pulled out of nowhere. Trump and Trump supporters did not just make up today, let's try this random thing. We have been warned this was going to happen. So when it does come January 6th, it's happening now, don't be surprised if there's confusion and more legal challenges. Reuters reported in October, in the U.S., a candidate becomes president by securing the most electoral votes rather than winning a majority of the national popular vote. Known as the Electoral College, the system allots electors to the 50 states and the District of Columbia, largely based on their population. It is theoretically possible for the governor and legislature, each representing a different political party, to submit 2 different election results, leading to so-called dueling slates of electors. Let me just say, the governor and the legislature. It is the legislatures in these states that have been challenging the results. We will see. They say below are the details of how it might play out. You know what the electors are. There's 538. They represent, each state gets one based on how many congressmen they have and how many congress people they have and how many senators they have. What are dueling electors? They say states with close contests between Republican President Trump and Joe Biden could produce competing slates of electors, one certified by the governor and the other by the legislature. The risk of this happening is heightened in the battleground states of Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, which have Democratic governors and Republican-controlled legislatures. Some election law experts are concerned that an unprecedented volume of mailed-in votes and legal challenges will delay the outcome of the election for weeks, creating an extended period of uncertainty. Trump has repeatedly said the election is rigged and made unfounded attacks on mail-in voting, which tends to favor Democrats. If early returns show a Trump lead, which it did, experts say the president could press Republican-controlled legislatures to appoint electors favorable to him, which he is, claiming the initial vote count reflects the true outcome, which he did. And many Trump supporters are citing now the Constitution, which says on election day, you appoint the electors. There is a subsequent provision added later. I don't think it's an amendment, so it might get challenged, that says if they don't appoint them on that day, they can still appoint them later. Governors in those same states could end up backing a separate slate of electors pledging to Biden if the final count showed the Democratic candidate had won, which is what happened. Both sets of electors would meet and vote on December 14th, and the competing results will be sent to Congress, which just happened. Which set of electors would prevail? Both chambers of Congress could accept the same slate of electors, which would almost certainly put the matter to rest. The chambers could also split, which is more likely if the Republicans retain control of the Senate and Democrats hold onto the House majority, which happened. Republicans could just be like, we don't care. We're counting the Republican votes for Trump. And the House could be like, we don't care. We're voting Democrat. And then Mike Pence goes, I don't know. No vote. Seriously. Look, this was written in October by Reuters. If lawmakers cannot agree on a set of electors, the country will find itself in uncharted territory. The Electoral Count Act, often described by academics as unintelligible, seems to favor the slate of electors certified by the state's governor, according to Ned Foley, a professor at Ohio State University, Moritz College of Law. But Foley notes that some scholars and an analysis by the Congressional Research Service have rejected that conclusion. Academics have sketched out several scenarios. Under one, Pence, as president of the Senate, could throw out both sets of the state's electors. Another contemplates that the House of Representatives would end up choosing between Biden and Trump. There is even a scenario in which the Speaker of the House, currently Democrat Nancy Pelosi, could become acting president. Yup. Would the U.S. Supreme Court get involved? They say the Supreme Court may be called upon to interpret the Electoral College Act to break any deadlock. A Supreme Court ruling helped resolve the 2000 Bush v. Gore case. But that case was about a recount in Florida, and the decision was reached before electors met to cast their votes. Quote, I think there will be legal challenges, said Jessica Levinson, director of Loyola Law School's Public Service Institute. But I could see a court saying this would really be better left up to Congress. Has it happened before? In 1876, dueling electors in 3 states were deadlocked until a deal was brokered days before Inauguration Day. The dispute was resolved if a Republican, Rutherford B. Hayes, became president in exchange for withdrawing U.S. troops left over from the Civil War from southern states. Quote, I hope it's a very low probability event, but 1876 is a reminder that it is not zero, and we have come very close to falling over that cliff in our history, Foley said. 1876, heck of an election. Dueling electors get sent. They couldn't determine who was actually the winner. So they convened a panel of judges and better men, as they like to say back then. Just like people of prestige, I suppose, forming a council to determine who the president would be. Yeah, that's how things went down. We're all biased because we've lived in this country for a long time. And over time, the country's institutions sort of solidify and people just adhere to them. But you need to realize what they did in 1876 had nothing to do with the Constitution for the most part. It was them being like, we need a solution because we don't want the Civil War to start back up. So the South was like, I'll tell you what, you guys get your president, you end Reconstruction. And that happened. Reconstruction effectively ended in 1876 when a panel just said, I guess that's the president? Yeah. So listen, you've got your establishment bias and you've got your anti-establishment bias. I think the anti-establishment individuals are the ones saying, I don't care what's written on, in your formalized notebook about how things go. The people on the anti-establishment types are like, is it in the Constitution? The media keeps saying president-elect, but according to the Constitution, that is meaningless. So you effectively have the anti-establishment type saying, is it in the Constitution? You have the left, the Democrats, the establishment saying, we go by our norms, which are not codified or in the Constitution. Joe Biden is not president-elect until January 6th, and we now have dueling slates of electors. Mind you, in Michigan, I don't know if Michigan's going to be, casting their electoral votes for Trump as well, like and doing a dueling election. They may have already done this. Michigan legislature presses ahead with investigation into election irregularities. Quote, there's still a high level of interest across the state. This is a story from Just the News. We got a report that was released, a judge ordered it released, from a guy who's Harvard educated, he worked with MIT, NASA, the CIA, Duke University. And he said that they believe that the Dominion voting machines were intentionally producing errors that would provide an opportunity for an election official without being traced or tracked to adjudicate votes and decide where they go. They say it was intentional, and it's a very, very damning report. For a lot of people, it's definitive proof. I don't know where it brings us. It needs to go to court. But that's it. It needs to go to court. Wisconsin recently ruled that COVID was not grounds for indefinite confinement, meaning there's potentially 200,000 votes that are in question. If we remove the 55,000 people who claimed this in the last cycle and say we got 155,000, which is anomalous, Trump may be able to find 10 or 20,000 votes that don't qualify and get them thrown out. The courts ruled the votes can be thrown out. That's why it's important that these electors cast their votes the way they did. The challenges are not done. It's very possible that in the end, Donald Trump prevails. I say very possible. I didn't say very likely. I don't know how many times I need to say that I don't think it's likely, but the reason I'm doing that, listen, it's just my opinion. In my opinion, I thought Trump was going to win based on the down ballots and everything. Look, I'll tell you this. My prediction was actually pretty good. Seriously. Now, you get these lefties who say that I was claiming Trump was going to win a 49 state landslide because they take the hypotheticals out of the context. The context before, for the most part, was me saying, like, if Trump legalizes pot and pardons Assange and appoints Tulsi Gabbard, like things he probably wasn't going to do, I'd say that's how he gets that 49 state landslide. I said things like, if the far left, escalates this violence and come election day, we see widespread rioting across the country, Trump will definitely do a 49 state landslide. They like to cut that out and say that I was predicting just for no reason Trump was going to win with a massive landslide. Here's what matters. The polls said Trump was down double digits in some states, and that was ridiculous. The historical margin of failure for the polls was now 4-7. And based on everything we saw down ballot, my prediction should have been better that I think Trump's probably going to win. And so will, down ballot votes. In which case, you take a look at the House races in the state level and the state House levels and the U.S. House, and you see Republicans did really, really well. So I don't know. Anyway, look, I digress. I don't know what my predictions are worth, okay? If you want to believe Trump is going to win, please do so with my blessing. I'm just saying, this is unprecedented, and I have a normalcy bias. The establishment has been prevailing for some time. They blocked up Trump. They jammed him up. They caused so many problems to his presidency. I just don't see why it would be that they just can't maintain some kind of control. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the dueling electors will play out and they'll go to Trump. It's really actually not that far-fetched to think the Republicans in the Senate are going to say, we pick the Republican electors. But keep in mind, you got people like Murkowski or whatever. You got a Manchin. You've got Republicans who are not going to play with this, play ball. And they're going to say Joe Biden. So that's just basically why I don't think it's going to play out this way. I think Joe Biden is going to be sworn in as the next president, and it's going to be really weird. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. I think it's horrifying. But that's where we're at so far. But I'll tell you this. I could be wrong. Come January 6th, could be wrong. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up tonight live, youtube.com/TimCastIRL. We're going to be having a good show, and we'll talk about this stuff with the crew. So make sure you check out youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.